Good morning, church. I'm so glad that you could come and join me for these short 7-minute devotions that I have prepared for you. Now, give or take, they may be a little bit more than 7 minutes or shorter, but you will find these devotions Monday to Thursday at 7 a.m. here. Now, there are many different ways in which you can use these devotions. If you just need a short video to watch, you're more than welcome to just watch this video and then afterwards pray, whether it be by yourself or with your family or with friends even. Or the second way that you could do it, which I would recommend, is to read the book and the chapter in which I pull my inspiration from for this devotion. And so in the description, I'll include what book of the Bible that I read and what chapter, and I encourage you to read it before you watch the video. And so if you'd like to do that, feel free to do that. I pull my inspiration from whatever chapter I use. I'm not necessarily explaining the chapter, but I'm pulling out small things that I feel like are very relevant to us and pulling small lessons and creating these devotions. And so you may pull something else different than I did, but this video will kind of share the perspective that I took on it, and hopefully you can find a blessing through my own personal devotions. It's really simple, and I try to make it as simple as possible for all ages to enjoy. But I really hope that you find the things that I find as interesting. And I pray that as you eat this spiritual food that I'm willing to share with you, that you can find some kind of spiritual nourishment to help you in your own spiritual journey and walk. So with that in mind, let's begin our first devotion. Now, if you know me, or if you've worked with me or encountered anything about me, you would know very well that I get scared very easily, right? When I'm walking around the corner at church and somebody's there and I don't see them, I'll flinch and my heart will start racing like really crazy. Or sometimes when I'm at a public restroom and I'm done doing my business and I'm about to leave the restroom and I don't know somebody is there like waiting, and it scares me, right? And I jump and it's like embarrassing, and I have to make up for it somehow and act cool or act like I knew it was coming, right? But a part of me is because I fear the unexpected, right? And I have lots of fears, right? I have the fear of rejection, I have a fear of the dark, a fear of people, and some of you guys can relate to that, right? Or maybe the fear of dying, right? Or the fear of getting lost, or maybe you have the fear of cauliflower or broccoli or vegetables, right? Now, out of all the fears that we encounter, there's one fear that I feel like is by far the scariest. You know what that is? You might think this is kind of weird, if not odd, to have this kind of fear. But for some of you, and for me at least, it's definitely a fear. But it's the fear of what others think of me. I always think, man, what if people think I'm weird? What if people think I talk funny, or I smell bad, or the way that I talk bothers them? What if people don't like me, right? What if I can't get along with this group of people? Or sometimes even I start to compare myself to others, right? And I see how maybe, this person over here is doing much better than me academically, or this person over here is just in his career is just doing way better than I am. Or maybe, it's your parents or your friends that start to compare you and say, hey, like, look at that person. And it gets you to start thinking, and you start having these irrational fears built up inside of you. I think a lot of the times, maybe some of you guys find yourselves getting caught up with what others think about us or you. And things like how we look or appear on social media. Do I look like I have any flaws, or are people going to judge me for what I wear or the caption that I put? Or maybe it's being this compared to your siblings, right? But when we start to think this way, what happens is we start to feel insecure. We feel uncertain, right? We don't really feel too good about ourselves because of that. And then what we try to do is to fix this problem is we start to become something that I like to call being a people pleaser. Right? We start to do things just so that we can receive the approval of people around us. My devotion today, the inspiration comes from Galatians chapter 1, specifically verse 10. But you see here, Paul is writing to the church in Galatia about this issue of people distorting the gospel message, but also trying to ruin the reputation of Paul. Now, Paul was really sad about this, not necessarily because people were talking bad about him, but really because people were missing the big point of what the gospel message was supposed to be about. But this is where we find him saying this in verse 10. This is towards the beginning of his letter. Galatians 1 verse 10 says this. It says, "Am I now trying to win the approval of human beings or of God? Or am I trying to please people? If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ." You see, this is the inspiration. This is what I take away from this. Paul's focus wasn't pleasing the crowds. Paul's focus was pleasing God. You see, rather than focusing on what other people think, the opinions people may have about you or me, just like Paul, we should do our very best to focus and commit ourselves to God. Now, this is not me trying to tell you that you have to ignore your friends or ignore people around you. I'm not saying that. What I am saying, though, is we have to remember to put God first. Instead of trying to get the approval or confirmation or the security from people, we always end up disappointed when we do that. Rather, we should look to God for our approval, for our confirmation, for our security. And what we'll find is we'll never be disappointed. I know it's certainly easier said than done, right? It's a process that we all have to go on. We have to intentionally make a choice, a decision every single day. Whether we find ourselves trying to find the approval of others, we have to pause and make that decision to live for God instead.